Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Scale Stories by Helium 10. My name is Bradley Sutton. I'm from Helium 10. Today, I'm joined by
Vincenzo Toscano, founder and CEO of eComsy.
And we are here to help
David Mead from InMotion double my sales.
All right. And today we're going to talk about an aspect that I think a lot of Amazon sellers shudder at, and that's advertising, PPC, ads, whatever you want to call it. But before we get into it, if you're just randomly landing on this episode and you haven't met David yet, make sure to go search on YouTube or on Helium 10 for Helium 10 Scale Stories. Look for David's first episode where we meet him, we meet the mentors like Vincenzo, and we learn a little bit about his InMotion brand and do an overview of a lot of the things that we're talking about in these side episodes or breakout episodes that David needs to implement in his account in order to double or potentially even more his online sales. And so as mentioned today, we are talking about advertising. And that was one of the reasons why we brought Vincenzo on as one of the mentors, is because he's one of the top experts out there as far as advertising goes. So Vincenzo, when you first got into David's account, whether it was in Helium 10 or Seller Central, wherever you were looking at it, what were some of the things that jumped out when you were doing an audit? Like, it doesn't have to be bad things, let us know some of the bad things or the good things and anything in between.
I would say, to be honest with you, the first time I look at the account, the first thing I saw is like, wow, there is so much opportunity here in this for improvement, right? Most of the time when I jump into accounts, I have a look at the campaigns and I have a look at what keywords they're going for, the structure of the campaigns, and sometimes I might have the feeling like there's not too much to improve here. But when I was actually having a look at David's account, there was a bunch of actually things that we can make better from the perspective
lots of opportunity.
Yes. Yes, which again, you can see from both sides of the coin. You could see as bad news because, yes, of course, are things that haven't been done. But it's also great news because that means it can be a new beginning for the account. I strongly believe if things are restructured correctly, we can definitely move in the right direction this time. And hopefully today we can go over some of those things and make it very clear in terms of what are some of the missing points and how we can make it happen. Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome. Good. Now, I remember a while back, he didn't even seem to have the brand registry, but I guess it finally went through. And that's, of course, why he was missing probably a lot of the advertising types that you would suggest, like sponsored display ads he couldn't run, sponsored brand video ads, sponsored brand headline ads. Like, you probably noticed there's none of those in his account, but it seems like he should be able to now. So, I mean, time will, once we actually implement this stuff, we'll be able to find out. But for all of you guys out there, you've got to be doing these other ad types. It's not just about sponsored products. You need to make videos that you could run video ads on. You need to have those headline ads, because advertising is not just 100% about a click and a conversion. There's a branding aspect of it. And the more you can get your brand out there and top of mind, this is just a general advertising principle. It doesn't have even anything to do with Amazon. It's like, why do people pay so much money for Super Bowl ads? They don't think they're going to pause the Super Bowl and go out and buy Doritos. But because they're putting stuff top of mind in so many places, be it a Super Bowl ad or other places, they know it's going to eventually help lead to sales. And that's what we're trying to do with Amazon advertising. Now, one of the interesting things is that for some of these other advertising types, like sponsored display, sponsored brand, and sponsored video, these all require digital or creative assets. It's not just like a keyword targeting. Obviously a video ad has to have a video. The headline ad, there's some custom creatives that you can do. And so I know offline, Vincenzo, you've been working with Kamal, who's also been helping David as well, to get some assets. Can you tell us, we don't have those ready yet, we'll maybe do another episode about that later or show the after effects, but how did you approach that? Because this is how somebody else would need to approach an agency or somebody who can provide assets. What kind of things were you asking for from Kamal?
Yeah, so I think the first conversation I was having with Kamal is, okay, how do we make sure we drive that click as much as possible into David listings? At the end of the day, that's what video campaigns is all about, because you can make as many videos you want, but if you don't have the right piece of content, they can become very expensive very fast. So essentially the conversation was all about what is the things that the competition is not answering in terms of, what is the things that makes your product unique from a pain point of view, the ingredients, how your product compares against other, how do people feel when they use the product, like playing also a lot with emotions. And we already have an initial kind of very strong agenda of around 5 videos we're going to go in terms of sponsored brand campaigns, because what we're going to do with these videos is we're going to focus on the top 5 keywords, and we're going to make sure that each of these videos is tailored to that keyword from the perspective of what people want to see when they type this keyword into the search bar, right? And then it's all about making sure those 3 seconds is all about, wow, I need to look more into what this product is about. And then, of course, we combining that with all the work that is also being done from a listing optimization point of view, driving that sale. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's now, maybe if you can share your screen, maybe in Helium 10 ads, and let's start going over some of the nitty gritty. We talked a lot about the big picture, things, but let's actually get into it and see what you saw about some instant improvements or things that he can start doing in his account.
Sure. Awesome. So here we are inside David's Helium 10 account. This is the PPC dashboard. And essentially, the thing we're focusing on is understanding, what is the impact that each of these campaigns is driving to the account, and what are the things that we should be fixing as soon as possible to ensure we can improve profitability, and also how the budget is being utilized. So the first thing I usually do when I jump on account is order all my campaigns by spend, because I need to know where most of my money is going. That's going to give me a clear signal in terms of, okay, this money being spent correctly, and if it's not spent correctly, what do I have to do to correct it? And as you guys can see here on the screen, and I'm going to actually increase this so you guys can see the meaning behind each of these campaigns, and then I'm going to open it so you can see more the details. Where David is spending most of the money is on campaigns that have to do essentially with research, because these initial campaigns brought essential targeting. So it's all about finding new keywords and new phrases, and Auto, as we all know, is also allowing Amazon to advertise on your behalf. And we all know, especially when it comes to giving money for advertising from a broad perspective or auto perspective, if you don't optimize this soon enough, they can become very expensive very fast. And that usually these campaigns are not meant for what really we need to work on, which is organic ranking. So when I start having a look at here, and you guys can also see here from the metrics perspective, the campaign that's spending the most in this specific scenario, which is the research campaign, which is a broad campaign, is having a very high ACOS. And one of the initial learnings I found as soon as I opened the campaign, which, by the way, I can show you here. We're inside the research campaign. We can see that one of the first mistakes, which is this is something I would advise nobody to ever do, is putting too many keywords on the same campaign. In fact, when I order by spend, and this is something I invite everybody watching this episode to do at home, if you order by spend, you're going to find that usually most of your spend is going to be concentrated on your top 5 to 10 keywords, because usually what happens is Amazon will prioritize usually the keywords that have historically the best conversion or the highest search volume. So that's why there has to be also a clear segmentation in terms of making sure high search volume keywords are on its own compared to keywords that have a low search volume. So I'm going to make a pause in case there is any questions, I don't know, from David or Bradley regarding this. Yeah.
I noticed you have a 1 week look back period. I usually look back longer a little bit. What are the kind of like, there's a reason for everything. Like somebody might want to go and look at a 2-day period, like on Prime Day specifically. What are the different reasons of why you would look at a 1 week versus a 60 days versus a 1 month, etc.?
Yeah. I mean, usually when we have a look at an account, to be honest with you, I like to divide in 3 kind of timelines. The first thing is I want to have a look at what happened last week, because it gives me a very fast kind of a overview of what is going on. Then I want to have a look at a month, and then I want to have a look at 3 months. The reason why I want to have a look at these 3 windows is allows me to understand if there is some consistency in the performance in terms of underperformance, or maybe there's some fluctuation that you were very profitable and then the profitability is not happening anymore. And that is going to allow me to essentially create kind of pinpoints throughout the whole timeline to understand where is potentially drop in sales or in profitability or in conversion. And usually if I have a look at the history of the PPC campaign, which you can have a look at the changes and everything, that usually could be correlated to something. You launch a campaign that it started to burn most of your money, or a campaign that's not converting good enough. Or sometimes if you want to even go deeper, which I like to do, I have a look at, have I changed something on my listing, in my title, in my images, my price point? Did I go out of stock? These are things that actually can also influence your PPC. But yeah, usually as a rule of thumb, the actual better view of having a look at really understanding what's going on is usually the last month. That's going to give you the best kind of overview of what recently is being done. And the weekly one is more to understand if there's some recent fluctuations that are happening that we need to be aware of for the future implementation.
Okay. Yeah. And then David too, this other thing where he was talking about, hey, this is like, keyword harvesting campaign or broad and auto. There's different targeting types in Amazon advertising. Like if you know there's a good keyword, hey, people are searching even branded keywords, in motion, hemp, roll on, like that specific term. You want to target that exact term. But then some of those ones that had a little bit of spend there were the research campaign, which is a broad campaign, and an auto campaign. And basically when you do that, it's like you're saying, all right, I'm targeting for the broad campaign in motion, but then Amazon is going to show you for in motion hemp, in motion roll on, in motion cream, in motion this, that, and the other thing. All right. So you're discovering new keywords maybe you didn't know were relevant that you'd want to go ahead and put into your manual campaign. And the auto campaign, you're just saying, hey, Amazon, take the wheel, show me for anything out there, and let's find some keywords. And you'll notice there's keywords you're converting for that technically don't even have anything to do with your product. Like one of the CBD cream, your product is obviously not a CBD cream. It doesn't have CBD. You can't even use the keyword CBD.
Can't sell it
yeah,
on Amazon.
Can't use that keyword in your listing, but that doesn't stop customers from searching it. And then, so if you weren't doing an auto or broad campaign, you never would have shown up for the keyword CBD cream because you're not even indexed originally.
I can't sell it.
Yeah. So that's why these are important. Now, something I noticed right off the bat, as soon as you were showing the ad manager there, Vincenzo, I think that we probably would be something he needs to do is, in Helium 10 ads, you can see the average budget utilization. And I saw a few of them are at 100%. So if he's got some profitable ones over time, like looking at that 60-day thing, and it's at 100%, wouldn't you say that he's probably leaving money on the table? Because, I mean, right now, it's only 10 a.m. in Pacific time. And I think I saw one that was already out of budget. So that means he's not even advertising more than half the day, right? Is that what that means?
Yeah, 100%. Like actually, I was gonna show you. I was ordering right now by ACOS, so everybody could also see on the screen. Like when we have a look at the budget utilization, that's essentially understanding how often the budget is being utilized, right? And you have campaigns where essentially, let's have a look at, for example, these 2 campaigns, right? Where you have a relatively low ACOS, right? Or even this one, that also a good kind of ACOS. You can see how the utilization is usually close to 100%. Which means some of the campaigns that drive most of the profitability most of the time are already off by now, right? And then in other instances, you have other campaigns like your medium ACOS campaigns that they are not utilizing the budget as often. Now, this is actually also a red flag, because another day, when this is also not close to 100%, percentages are very low, that means your bids are not aggressive enough. That means whenever your bid is competitive enough, which usually ends up being very late at night, or when people are out of budget, you are showing and you're being profitable. But that should also be a signal for you that you should double down on these campaigns, because when you show, you're clearly having a better ACOS campaigns such as this one where that's not the case. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's already something that we can do today where we can easily increase the budget and maybe look at some of the ones that aren't using the budget. Hey, do we need to increase some bids on there? So that's good. What else?
Yeah.
What else did you want to bring out?
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to bring to the conversation as well is when we start having a look as well. For example, one of the campaigns that perform the best starts to point to campaigns that are exact match campaigns, right? And that's the reason why as soon as I jump on the account and I saw that most of the campaigns were going from a broad match perspective or other perspective as a red flag, because that means we are not actually getting the search terms that you're converting efficiently and moving them into exact match, right? So there's also a lack of proactiveness there in terms of, okay, broad is clearly identifying some specific search terms, which we can see here. There's some specific search terms that are the one driving the profitable sales. The same happens from an auto perspective. We can go to the search term report and we can see out of all our auto, which is the one actually driving most of the sales. But the goal of that is then to proactively move this into exact match campaigns, because that is going to allow us to do two things. First of all, allocate more budget. But the second thing, which I'm going to go a bit deeper, is also placements. Like, for example, some of the things that's not being heavily also tackled across the whole account is placement optimization. You're having very efficient conversion, for example, in some keywords top of the search, which is not the case for other and top of the search. So you need to understand which keywords you can show top of the search, which keywords you have to show for pro details page or rest of the search, and dynamically have the allocation of budget to make sure that you essentially are showing for each specific keyword where you're more likely to convert into a sale. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Excellent.
And now
I have a question here.
Sure.
A lot of these I can tell by the sales. If you scroll down a little bit,
yeah,
he only sold one, because his product costs $32, and so it's one conversion. Now I don't know if you're looking at 1 week or
yeah, we're looking we're looking in this case.
What's your threshold as far as when you harvest a keyword? Like, do you want, as soon as there's one sale, go ahead and put it to the manual campaign? Do you want to wait for two sales for a search term before you put it to the manual campaign? Where do you cut it off?
I think a lot of that has also to do with the economics that you allow yourself for customer acquisition, because some brands might afford essentially to allocate more budget to acquire a client compared to us. And what I mean by that is, if you allow yourself to spend, let's put in the example of David. Let's say David allow himself to allocate close to $100 for customer acquisition because he really believes not in the first purchase but in the lifetime value. Then in that case, given that we are really focusing on that longer approach, usually we don't wait that long, because then we can afford the mistake of having the guessing, and even one sell, even if then that allows more clicks that get us to $100, we can afford it because that made us the one set that might cover the customer acquisition cost. But for most people, that the profitability is not that, it might not be that high, and you need to really be proactive. I would say a good number to take in mind is 3 to 5 sales. 3 to 5 sales is a good number, and then based on how that behaves in terms of if proactively 3 to 5 sales is making me profitable, I will keep it or increase it or decrease it and go from there.
Okay. Another question I had is, this is probably an auto campaign. Sure. I'm not sure, but I see some of his own branded keywords in there. When you have exact targeting campaigns, do you think he should have his branded keywords separate than just like maybe the generic ones like hemp pain cream and stuff like that is in one, but then in motion hemp? Should it be segregated like that, or it doesn't matter if it's together?
Yeah, that's actually another thing I saw across the account. On the campaigns that kind of broad phrase and auto, you're having some of the generic keywords coming up from a search term perspective with your branded term, which actually that's very good. That means some people is looking now already for your brand. Now, something I usually recommend to do, which is not happening on this account, and I will be doing as part of the plan of action, I will take my top 5 to 10 keywords and create a branded specific campaign. So that means I will take my top 10 keywords, I will put my brand in front of it, and I will create an exact match campaign. to essentially make sure I dominate the keywords I know where, from a brand perspective, I already have some awareness. And then I will do essentially with my branded terms also a bit of phrase, because sometimes you can find more long tails out of it. But branded campaigns is a must. I would say if you start identifying that you're having branded search terms from your auto, from your broad and friend generic keywords, that means it's a signal that the awareness is already kicking off in terms of people recognizing your brand. And you should maximize as much as possible the opportunity, but then consolidating the real estate control by moving into exact match, as I just described. Yeah. Okay. Now, another thing that is also missing here in terms of the strategy. So, talking about sponsored products here, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard Amazon Marketing Cloud. Is something that is being utilized a lot lately, and that's something I feel, David, you can utilize significantly here, because by having a look in depth about your niche, there's clear connotation to the type of person that might buy your product, because at the end of the day, there's different lifestyles associated with the type of person that could buy the product. So something that's also not been leveraged here within your campaigns is that within each campaigns where you are not leveraging essentially a Amazon Marketing Cloud. I can also show this here. I have one of the campaigns here actually, so we can see it from an audience perspective here. So we can see. So we can see, for example, here, this is one of the biggest spender campaign. That's the Broad campaign. You can see here that there is no Amazon Marketing Cloud build leverage here. And Amazon Marketing Cloud, for everybody watching, in summary, essentially what allows you to do is allows you to create kind of audiences out of behaviors. Amazon usually, as a rule of thumb, give you the basics, which is people have added the product to cart, they have bought from you, or they have seen the product. But really where we can maximize this is creating personas, like down to the type of sport, the gender, the age, where are they based in the United States. And we can already see that in your history. And then what we can essentially do is that every single time a person types from your keyword, we know historically they represent, from a lookalike perspective, the type of person that has spent the most amount of money or has converted the highest with you. So now we can make sure that every single dollar has the highest probability to give you, the best return on investment, right?
Okay, so definitely use the new AMC audiences. Before, this was something that he couldn't have used even if he wanted to. It wasn't even available to regular Amazon sellers.
Now it's available to everybody. That's correct.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now, another thing I would like to mention in terms of from a strategy point of view is, of course, we're having here some product targeting campaigns, right? But something I did notice here, and I'm going to open the screen so everybody can see, is when we do product targeting campaigns, usually this type of campaigns, the functionality of these campaigns is to target essentially other products, your competitors, right? And when I start having a look at some of the history of this campaign, I can already identify one of the ASINs that's been targeted, that's been driving essentially a good performance in terms of sales. Now, funny enough, we can see that is essentially your own
his own product.
Yeah, right. So now
that's just something that people out there should do. Like it's not just for competitors. You target your own product, and that means like somebody clicks on this, but then maybe they don't buy it, but the ad is going to start following them around Amazon, right?
Yeah, and this straight away shows me that that's a huge opportunity for us to explore. In fact, just as I'm sharing my screen, we can see how as of now we're actively not winning the offer on key placements. This is usually achieved with sponsored display. You can see under the buy box. Like imagine you're gonna make a purchase. Straight away, I'm targeted with this ad in here or this ad in here, which is way cheaper, right? That will trigger an emotion on the consumer to say, oh, actually, let me click on it and have a look at this product. And as soon as I do here, essentially that will drive me to their listing, and now you potentially lose the sale, which is actually something I also found on your brand analytics. I saw there's a lot of impression, a lot of clicks on some of the terms, but then they're not converting into add to carts and purchases. And usually that's because we don't have a strong enough PPC defense strategy. So that's another thing we need to tackle straight away. We need to make sure that all the placements, as much as possible, even here, are covered by our own products. Yeah.
For sponsored display, does every sponsored display ad also need a custom image? And is that what are you working on with Kamal for him?
Yeah, so essentially we're also coming up with custom banners and lifestyle for sponsored brand. We're going to repurpose some of that for sponsor display. But for those out there that maybe wonder if you need one, like if you don't want, you can just use essentially your main image and your logo from your brand.
You know what? Let's create with I'm going to share my screen. Let's actually create his first live here on the show. Let's create his first sponsor display. I will just use the simple one without the image, and let's just see if it's going to work here. Let me share my screen. And so how you can do this within Helium 10 ads is you go to the ad manager and just hit add campaign. And we'll do a single campaign, sponsor display. And let's do it for the roll on. Let me just take a look at what the naming convention is here. Oops, hold on. And then for some of his first targets, would you look at ASINs from his other campaigns that are converting? And then that's usually a good place to start for finding ASIN targets?
Yes, I mean, usually when it comes to ASIN targeting, I'm going to give you a few places where you can start. The first one, it will be your own catalog, as we already overseen. The second one will be the top 10 competitors that are dominating the top 10 keywords, right? The way you can achieve that is essentially even within Helium 10, you can have a look at the keyword level and also have a look at with integration with brand analytics, which are the ASINs that are controlling most of the impression and click share, and make sure then those are within your product targeting campaigns. Another one I love to do as well is go for accessories. And this is something you can also do with Helium 10. You can essentially buy products that are bought together. And this is usually a good kind of a loophole to exploit, because be mindful that most of the time your product, even without you knowing, is bought with another accessory. It could be another cream. It could be a specific thing that goes with the implementation of your product. And this will allow you sometimes to avoid the high CPC that might imply to go straight for your top competitor. You could go for secondary kind of niches that complement your main niche, right? And yes, start with these three kind of buckets. And then, of course, auto campaigns will also start throwing ASINs at you that could perform, and then also essentially start isolating those into its own campaign and take advantage of that. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to pause this really quick, and I'm just going to off camera put a whole bunch of the ASINs here. But what about, should he also be doing like the remarketing audiences and things like this, or for this just the at least in the beginning just the actual ASINs?
Yeah, I would say at the beginning contextual, because at the end of the day, audiences and all that, those are also very powerful. But we also to some extent going to achieve that already with Amazon Marketing Cloud, and we're going to be more efficient with our budget. Usually with sponsor display, contextual is the one that's going to drive the fastest return on investment. And then once we have more budget at our disposal, we can test the other ones that can allow us to enter into more niches.